Happy Friday. What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What a beautiful day it is. What a beautiful moment in time. Someone mentioned that in the comments, and that really was the essence of everything. As well as we have, Mike talking about, listen, chilling with the kids, working for a bright future. This is conquering the markets all day long. The mindset, the principles. I love to share it all with you. This is Jordan with Conquer Trading and Investing. Today, we're going to be looking at the markets. We're going to be having a fun Friday, right? Making sure that as we do what we do together, spend this hour or so looking at the markets, make sure that we walk away with the greatest clarity there is across the internet. That's what all we could do, right? And even if things are unclear, well, that means that we still have that clarity and the non-clarity at that particular point. But things are looking pretty clear right now. Let's take a look at the question that a lot of people are asking. And what they're asking is, oh, by the way, did you see this reminder? Like all of a sudden in the media, now people are no longer talking about the inflation being transitory, but they're talking about it. Well, it's a good thing because if prices rise, then wages are going to have to rise. It's like crazy town, but that's what's happening. And they're like, just like painting the picture now, as Yellen told us yesterday, oh no, don't worry, inflation's a good thing. We need inflation. We want inflation. You're going to start seeing now, we find out whether or not this was deflationary or inflationary. Jordan, can we take a look at what's going on here? I see the dollar breaking out. If I look at the dollar and I'm looking at it in real time, I can see that we're coming close to a pretty strong breakout. Let me zoom in. I want to take this off for 1 second and just come down to the 8 hour, the 8 hour kind of make our living here in the markets. And I see the trend line over here, a break above that is a break of an inverse head and shoulders. If you're looking at on the 3-day, you can see clearly that trend line is the next break for the repair upwards. It's a big deal if it breaks to the upside. We'd have to change our momentum looking to trade from the upside. And how would that affect the dollar? I mean, how would that affect Bitcoin? A lot of people are wondering right now, wait, before we get going, we got to do the CTM intro, also by Headsnack. Did you know that it was Headsnack who created our original intro in the uploaded? That's right, Headsnack strong. Listen, people are thinking that the dollar looks like under these conditions with the Fed talking about possibly raising rates, possibly later this year, maybe next year, maybe 2 years from now. They're not really sure, but don't listen to the dots anymore because we just really don't know, right? And then we see these inflationary pressures that are definitely here. They seem to be persistent, right? Prices keep going up in different areas at different times, right? Flights right now, very expensive. Food prices for the first time in a year went down last month. That's a good sign, but is that victory? Do they, by the way, the packages went down also, the package sizes. If you're out there shopping, you understand. But what they're doing is they're hiding the inflation. The inflation has already been persistent, right? Now it might get out of control. If they're talking about realizing and talking about the inflation, that means the inflation is really getting out of hand. What happens? It looks like the dollar, even still against all other fiat, is going to break out to the upside, right? This is the DXY. It's the US dollar index. It's used, weighted against the euro, weighted against the yen, weighted against the pound, and other currencies, right? Canadian dollar, Australian dollar. It's a basket of currencies most heavily weighted towards the euro. And it looks like the dollar versus fiat is getting ready to break out to the upside. What does that mean for Bitcoin if we have a big move here on the dollar? And what does it mean for gold? I mean, I'm not gonna talk about what it means for gold in this particular episode because it's Bitcoin centric. But if you're looking at what's happening here with gold, gold has performed very well when the dollar has been strong. You could go back as early as it was 2020, right? January 2020, before the crisis, and you saw the gold appreciating from 1,500. Straight up towards 1,1800. US dollar was very strong during that period as well. Bitcoin, though, could it affect the bull market run here? If we see the dollar break out to the upside and we see some strong pressure from the dollar, could that affect the current Bitcoin run, because the current Bitcoin bull run seems to be running a little short right now. What do I mean by that? I mean, like, well, we've been going sideways now for quite a while. It wasn't, regardless of the depth of the V, which I thought was going to be about 30%, right? It went a lot lower, and it hasn't been a V out of it. Now, it could be because it rounded so far into the drop that it's now consolidating here. And then when we eventually, whenever the most important trend line in crypto breaks, whenever that might be, could it be as late or as early as September? I mean, either way, on the chart, you could just follow the line. And you notice right now, by the way, you notice that line keeps dropping. Like from where it was breaking, it needed to break at 56,000. Now a break of that line is at 42,000. By the time it breaks, if that's into September, that could be breaking above $37,000, $38,000. That line, if people are not paying attention, the slope continues to come down. The entry out of this is going to be lower and lower. That's why patience pays. It was brought up that patience pays earlier. By the way, if you're just joining us, welcome. I'm glad that you are here. It is good that you're here. And if you're not, welcome back. If you're new, definitely do subscribe to the channel. We looked at just a couple of days ago. I'm going to jump back into the DXY in a moment. I'm going to jump back in there. But we were just looking at, is Bitcoin getting ready to move? That was the question we were asking ourselves just a day ago. And why? It was very simple. Let me jump down over here to the 8 hour. We had this trend line that we knew that if we broke down below it, Bitcoin was going to then make a leg down. Bitcoin is, what does it drop? 5% off the high over here, another 3 or 4%, and now seems to possibly be coming in for the retest, right? The momentum is down after breaking that trend line. And now are we coming in for a retest of the next bit of resistance, which would be the broken support acting as resistance over here. And then we have a confluence because we have this trend line from this triangle that we were tracking. We could have broke out to the upside. We didn't know which way we were going to break a day ago. All as we said that on the break, that's where the next move, go. The move is going down. And right now we're coming in for a retest, right? Expect if that retest is broken and you resume down, we'll expect that we're going down lower. Right now the momentum's to the downside. Now that stops, that diminishes once we break now like this. The next time, let me just remove some of this footage over here. This line doesn't need to be here anymore because that showed us that we broke down to the downside. I can move it now over here. Let me just, the controls of the mouse. All right. So what are we looking at? Are we still looking at the top side of that trend line in place? Yeah, that's what we're still looking at. That hasn't changed right now. And that's also providing the resistance, by the way. We were looking at yesterday in the video that, we're talking about is Bitcoin getting ready to move. There it goes. Sorry, that it broke down. Had it broken out, then the pressure would be to the upside. But that trend line has not yet changed. It's never been breached. And there's no rejection yet. If we do reject off the resistance in this area now, then we will change the slope of this trend line, the repair trend line. But that hasn't occurred yet. So the same trend line remains in place. And if we get a failed retest and get back above it, that's obviously entirely bullish. Is that a bit of hopium right now? Sure, there's no question about that. After the break of the trend line we were watching, the momentum is to the downside. Breakdown, retest. If we resume down, expect more pressure. With that in mind, let's jump back up. Could you, by the way, if I forget, I remember now, could you go ahead and smash the like button as we get going here right now on our Friday session? Our Friday session, CTM, Fun Friday. And we're getting ready to talk about how a strong dollar, as it looks like, the dollar is being rejected, actually at the trend line. If you come down to the, to the 8 hour again, and you see that the dollar's being rejected by that resistance, and now it's coming down where it could break this trend line. And if it does, the dollar has just become very neutral after being rejected. And a lot of people are looking for that breakout to occur, but we're just trading in a strong downtrend into strong resistance, right? And this could be the new high over here. Like if we break down, we could also be challenging the yearly lows on the dollar, right? Forget what happens if that breaks down. That's all possible, but right now, as it is, as the Fed begins to talk about tightening, right now the dollar is destroying on a short-term time frame all other fiat currency. It's been very, very strong, right? Off the double bottom, off a longer term support over here, kicking into the trend line, right? If we break here to the upside, all we have is past behavior to go off of what happened, right? I have these two yellow slopes over here showing that why the periods where the dollar, beginning in January 2015, it began much lower, but I'm going to show you in relation to Bitcoin and what Bitcoin did, why the dollar was experiencing historically its strongest two periods. There's one stronger period. Let me come back to the 3-day time frame back over around 2000. I remember when what happened when the euro just came into existence, right? And I remember how weak the euro started, and then I remember when it first broke 100 and was climbing. And I remember when the euro dollar rate went to 143 to 1. People thought that the dollar was done. I don't know what year it was. It was probably like 2009, 8. I don't remember what it was, but people thought the dollar was done, and we've seen these wild swings occur. But if you look at what's been happening, since 2008, since the first bout of QE, you see that price has gone nowhere. It's gone really sideways in a pretty tight range, right? Now, we know if we do wind up getting rejected where we are right now, that resistance, and we break that yearly low over here, that opens up, a waterfall to the downside, right? But right now, the dollar seems to be firming up towards the bottom of the support of the range. And this is what the Fed wants, right? The Federal Reserve doesn't want a strong dollar. It doesn't want the dollar milkshake playing out and the system breaking. On the other hand, it doesn't want a sharp, quick devaluation of the dollar, right? It had last year a 37% devaluation of the dollar. That's sharp and that's quick, and you could lose a lot of confidence that way very quickly, right? If there are any alternatives. But I digress. They like it in this tight range, and the longer they can keep it here, the better for themselves, right? The longer the music plays, so long as they keep the dollar, not rising too fast, not falling too fast, in this nice yearly range between 88 and 100. That's like the sweet spot for them. They're perfectly happy with that. That's where we are right now. I'm not worried about any type of dollar systematic events right now, as we saw back during February and March of the crisis, of the dollar liquidity crisis, right? We're just not there. So we're watching the technicals. Technicals are showing us that we could break out to the upside. If we break out to the upside, we could only look at past periods and between here and here over the last 20 years when the dollar was strongest between the top of this range, and during why the dollar was in the top of its 20-year range, right? Could it break out to the upside one day? Could it test the 120 high and or break it at the if the dollar was collapsing? That's what actually might happen during that period. That's why we understand the dollar milkshake and what it means. That's not happening right now, but in these periods, in these 235 likes, I think we're a little light on the likes this morning. We do have 731 people watching this live. Let's go ahead and get that to an even ratio, 50-50. If you could help out those that are watching this on the replay today, if you could go ahead and smash that like button, help get this video seen so more people could benefit from the information and the community that we have together. So Bitcoin during those same periods, let me find those two, and I have to look at it differently because Bitcoin just like the dollar's going nowhere and Bitcoin's going up. Like the dollar's going nowhere over the past 20 years, and Bitcoin is why they say, going to the moon, But let me just focus on one period at a time then, just so you could see it. And that's why the dollar was at its strongest, in its strongest period of the range. And Bitcoin had a 500% gain. This is going back out of the bear market capitulation of 2015. And I think that's what's important, that Bitcoin, I have the halving events on the dollar as well, the halvings over here. That's what's causing the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin. And when the dollar's acting strong, well, Bitcoin acted stronger, and then the dollar really came off hard, right? And Bitcoin, Bitcoin was peaking during its 4-year cycle, I think, right? Then you go back to this other period where the dollar was very strong. Bitcoin had a 283% gain. That's why the dollar was at its strongest. The dollar, what did it do from there? Let's take a quick look whether it went up or down from that peak. It went down sharply, right? So the Bitcoin was rising into this whole area. And then when the dollar came off, Bitcoin just continued doing its thing. So all that I could see by consulting past behavior, the only history we have, during the periods where the dollar acted the strongest, Bitcoin was outperforming, Bitcoin was really healthy, right? So if we break out here to the upside, I would just say, or be under the assumption that this is really good for Bitcoin. How could I say otherwise? Every other time the dollar's been rising in its strongest, so has Bitcoin been outperforming it. All right, what else? And what is next? This was some great. Sharon asked this yesterday in the training session, and then it was also asked earlier during the live stream. Wanted to make sure we covered that. It brings us to, the price of Bitcoin on this date. What's interesting about this chart this morning, where it shows highlighted in red the percentages each year, and we look at last year being almost a 300%, which is really outperforming. You really see that type of, I'm sorry, here we go, 300, I had it messed up. From a year now, since a year ago, right above the red box. Don't look at the red box, look at the yearly change. The yearly change for Bitcoin last year outperformed aggressively. That happened to be, though, because the year before we were coming out of the crisis, this is June 2020, right? This is just a few months after the March crisis, and Bitcoin had really been under pressure, So if this was just like an average 100% return, 150% return, would this year be looking at just another average 150% return? That's what it seems to be. That makes sense that we outperformed over the past 12 months. What happens over the next 12 months? Are we gonna see a higher gain or a lower gain than 300% over the next 12 months? If you look at the chart, right, a 300% gain over here. I mean, that I don't even make my goals. I wouldn't even make my goals. We would not be 140,000. No, we'd be trading under 132,000. I mean, so I hope that doesn't happen, because that is definitely not whatsoever even remotely my base case. My base case is Bitcoin, $160,000, diminishing returns, and 140 mission accomplished. So I would be aggressively off if that's what happened. We'll watch. We'll see. This is supposed to be 2021, the year of the big candle. I think it's still in play. My targets haven't changed whatsoever. If you go back over here, my target range, the sweet spot between $250,000 and $320,000, that remains my best guess of what the price of Bitcoin is going to be, at the peak of this bull market cycle. Could the range actually be, as high as 410,000 still? Well, let's see what happens if we have any time. Let's see what happens in the fall. For sure it could, because when I look at this current cycle over, I see that I'm still in volatility outperforming the last cycle. And if that volatility is to the downside, it could also be again to the upside outperforming. That's my base case. That's what it looks like is going to happen. And this is all just the base case. This is all just the base case, and it's a range. I'm just throwing out random numbers here, not trying to time it, because it depends when Bitcoin actually peaks. And when Bitcoin is actually going to peak, I don't know. When we have over here marked off the 19th of November, that's just like a guesstimate putting us in the area. Ultimately, you have to be watching what's happening in price and following the price action, right? This is, could I say that, Bitcoin should be in a range to the extreme over here, somewhere close to $750,000, $800,000, and on a downside, as low as $130,000. Yeah, I mean, that's all within the range. My expectation is more towards this darker green where everything is converging. And that remains our expectation of the path that is likely to be followed. What happens, well, that's what we need to watch, right? Is it possible from where we are today that Bitcoin actually makes a lower low than it has over the past couple of months. Or sure, it could happen as soon as this weekend. Bitcoin's being rejected right now. It could test the lows rather rapidly and then break them, right? Does that mean that if we break the lows that we're going to shoot up? Well, we don't know how low we go. We don't know what type of liquidations take place around this area, or whether there's a bunch of buying, orders in this area that people feel like is a really good long-term entry into Bitcoin at the bottom of these deviations. It's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. But there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of big money out there, right? That's going to be looking to take positions into Bitcoin. Now, when they do it, or when they're forced to do it, is a different story. Anyway, just painting the picture this Friday. I want to play. So what do we want to play? We want honeymoon, or do we want head snack right now on this Friday morning? Let me go ahead and just repaint these ranges over here. I'm going to play some honeymoon vocals and take a look at what's going on with all of you and the comments. I think we will have one to start with over here for sure. After honeymoon, this is the one we'll start with. Wells Fargo pulling a line of credit for personal lines of credit. What it means in the broader sense, is it the first time that Wells has done this? When was the last time they did it? And what happened after the last time they did it? We'll take a look at that. Wow. I gotta stop us short over here. I can't believe the quality of the discussions we get to have right now. Let's take a look at them. I don't know which one to start with. So let me just start at the bottom and work myself up to the top. Boom, boom, boom. George, I wonder how Bitcoin will react when the markets start to correct of a possible tightening cycle from the Fed. Right. A tightening cycle, George, in my opinion, is something that over time could cause actually a systematic breakdown, right? Like a shortage of dollars. And when the tightening winds up later on causing a tightening of dollars, if that causes a systematic crash, right? And all markets are crashing, like not the markets are not crashing, like the markets are crashing. At that point, Bitcoin is going to be way adversely affected for however long that lasts, right? Until however long that the Fed comes in and injects money, Otherwise, if the Fed doesn't inject money, then the system crashes. Like it's the death of the dollar and basically society. Could it happen? For sure. I mean, Mad Max. I never seen it, but probably want to watch what the world would look like for a short time or something like that. It could happen, but the odds are that these money masters, these masters of, they're able to, to keep the music playing. The longer the music plays, the more wealth they're able to steal and distribute from we the people, the peasants, to whoever runs, the show. And that's what so I don't think that it would be a big deal if they began tightening. It's a question of how long until the system broke. That could be quite a while. Good morning, fam. Jordan, could you please speak of the Wells Fargo thing, right? We talked about that opening up before honeymoon. And listen, it was the summer of 2020, right? After the lockdowns, where they had last pulled these line of credits from individuals. And then they were worried about whatever they were worried about. I mean, Wells Fargo is what you should worry about, right? They're known for creating hundreds or more, hundreds of thousands or more of fake accounts and customers. That's a bank here, and it regulated here in the United States of America. And but I guess Buffett, I guess it's all good since Buffett's the one. Did you ever see Silicon Valley when they need to make fake accounts and they hire someone to make fake? Is that what Wells Fargo was doing? Were they paying, developers over, somewhere across the world money to create fake accounts? I don't understand. It happened though. That's real. They're doing Wells Fargo is noise. Wells Fargo is just like a symptom of the health of the overall financial system. It's to help you remember that it's all a house of cards. From my perspective, the move to 20 to 6, George is also saying that, look, 20 to 64K was like a rocket ship. That's why we crashed. Yep. We tried to look at during that period in January as Bitcoin came from 19,000. A lot of people thought was like the top for a while. They thought Bitcoin trading at $19,000 was pretty aggressive, coming off, just within 35 days or less. Right? Do you remember those Twitter posts? And we were talking about within 28 days, Bitcoin should test a new all-time high. That's what happened the previous past, and it happened again. But then people thought, well, we're in for a big correction. We came too hard, too fast, and we actually went. The risk was to the upside. I let everyone know that the risk was to the upside in this area, right? Why a lot of people thought we came too far, too quick. People thought 30, 40,000, 13, 14,000 was too far, too quick, 30, 40% gains in just a month. And then all of a sudden we blew past, the risk was to the upside substantially, right? Now the hard part, because we were looking in January, I was showing you in 2013 what these price moves of Bitcoin looked like as it went straight up. It's hard to know when you've come too far, too fast, when you're making 50% gains a month. How do you know if that ends over here at $96 or that's actually going way past that and going as high as $250, in another month? Yeah, it's very difficult. The volatility is crazy. So you don't know whether or not this was a rocket ship. We didn't see any type of blow off top. We did see a rounding top. We did see, and people were aware of it, where I missed it, saying that look, this is exhausting. This is signs of exhaustion taking place. And it was a rounding top that took 3 months. And then we're in for the correction. But we're in for the correction. Now, it's quite possible Bitcoin could kick out some liquidity, taking out stops, dropping to the downside. How far and how quick it would be is no one's guess, right? Usually those things are pretty quick. They last hours. We'll see. I don't know. All I am focused on and watching for is when we break this line over here, right? Now, if we're trying to follow as closely as it can, this was the first repair that we noted as a repair. Bitcoin went in for that retest, resumed off, has not yet made a higher high, bearish, right? It didn't resume out of there, right? And instead, is coming back down, making lower lows. But right now, it seems to just pretty much still be consolidating in this range it's been in since the middle of May, right? It's not going higher. It's not going lower. It's definitely towards the bottom part of the range, So listen, is it possible that we're rejected further? Let me come back to that other chart with the 2 out. We're going to get a test of this area, right? If we break out, then that's going to look better for Bitcoin. If we're rejected and take out the last swing low, things could get ugly over the weekend. That's that. The tradable event, I don't, for those that are like, this was when we talked about this occurring, right? That's a big move. It's a 5% move in 20. And that's when we said, a day ago, there's a big move ready for Bitcoin. There was the big move. We don't know which way it's going to go. We didn't know if it was going to break out or to the downside, but that's why you're able to manage your risk. And if you want to be a profitable trader, if you want to be a profitable investor, it all comes down to understanding and managing your risk. It's the first thing we do in Conquering the Markets in the course, is talk about your expectations for position size, for each and every trade, for how many trades you're taking a day, a week. And that's the single most important part of trading. You have to get that right first. Now, that can be deployed many different ways, including you can make a straight bet against Bitcoin, like I did. Bitcoin, buying spot, betting it goes to zero, right? If it goes to zero, I lose, right? Could Bitcoin ever go to zero? Are you willing to risk everything? All or nothing, an asymmetric type bet. That's the bet I saw as being the most probable to play out, over the next not only year, not only 2 years, next 4 years. Yeah, I'm in early, but I'm in early because I saw the trade, and everything that I saw occurring is occurring. So I continue to be on the right side of the trade, and that's my goal. My goal was, to trade this out to the top of the 4-year cycle. Obviously, if there's the worst case, I understand for Bitcoin, for myself, is that if this is the top of the 4-year cycle and we saw a measly 3x off of the last all-time high, yeah, there's some positives. We're seeing countries adopt Bitcoin. For, right now, El Salvador, they're onboarding 20,000 people a day. Next, Guatemala, giving them a fair and just monetary system. They're going to wind up thriving. Other countries are forced to do it, especially if the dollar starts strengthening. If the dollar starts strengthening, then they're like, these people are getting wrecked because they're not creating dollars in their currency. They're creating whatever their fiat currency is. And if there's a shortage of dollars because there's too much debt to pay back, more debt than there is dollars, of course that's going to, that's why there's inequality in the world. It's an unfair and unjust system. And regardless if Bitcoin is the best system to replace that or not, right? There doesn't seem to be a better alternative at this point, right? A true, fair, just, decentralized network. Is it a matter of time before Bitcoin breaks the most important trend line in crypto and resumes up, as it's mid-cycle right now? Yes, that's my belief. Is it nice when it's more of a V? Yeah, that's really nice. There's nothing easy about it, which is why we do what we do every day, which is why we spend the time together to make sure that we have the mindset needed to go ahead and conquer the markets. I think that I think this is a fantastic buying opportunity. I think that people aren't going to get this chance for too long, and the best case scenario, seems to be that, you have until September before we break out. Is that the most probable? It's really not the most probable. It would not be, it would be well within our expectation, let's to say, to kind of come out of here pretty quickly, as in the past, mid-cycle dips. That's what happened. We came out, when we came out, I should say, we came out hard, right? So you see price right now, just consolidating sideways, dripping down, kind of, drooping down, yeah, lower swing highs, right? Also lower lows, and now we're zooming out of that. We just broke the trend line we showed. We're coming in for a retest. If we're rejected and come back down, is the expectation that we make a lower low over here. It should be somewhere around this 28,500 area. Is that as low as we go? I don't know. Is it possible that we have further capitulation? If we do, most likely that winds up being very wicky, like something like this, But when we start to rebound, the next opportunity to understand that we're rebounding is a break of this dotted trended line over here, right? And could the low of this breakdown be in this 5% low? Yes, it's entirely possible. If you're trading off of that, short of a time frame, that you're taking a trade on a 2-hour time frame after a break of this small little fractal, right? Then you're surely taking 5% profits, taking some off, setting your stop loss to break even. Now you come in for this retest over here, let's see if whether or not price goes down further in your favor or you get now. We break here to the upside though. That's the first sign, the first opportunity that Bitcoin's coming out of this correction. My expectation is that when Bitcoin does come out of this correction, it's no longer sideways, that it will start being sharp into the upside, right? Now, we're not saying at this point, melt your face off was for a reason, right? That has been price behavior around this particular time of its bull market cycle. When it does start resuming, that it's the bull starts running and it starts running strong, and it only gets stronger with some volatility in between. So those are my expectations. I want to hear, was that all the questions we had? Michael, Jordan, where are we in the terms of days for the mid-cycle dip? Too many days. Michael, check on Discord. And we'll put that in the CTM modeling. What else? Bretton Woods prediction. Something's changing. A lot's changing, right? Russia has taken the US dollar out of its reserves, right? There's speculation that Russia would be a really good candidate to adopt Bitcoin, right? But in the meantime, what they've been doing is dropping dollars, acquiring gold, and trading more in euros, and also more in yuan. So you're seeing that like the dollar right now, the de-dollarization occurring. Like Russia just dropped dollars. If you're looking for a bigger signal, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, does that still mean, even with Russia dropping dollars, that the US dollar as the reserve currency is like gone? No way. Not for a long time. The majority of transactions, even though they're at, a multi-decade low, is in dollars, right? Then you have the euro, very little bit, increasing small, but very little. Is that there's so much dollar debt out there that people, in order to not default on their debt, need to pay it back in dollars, that the system just perpetuates itself. Now, are they going to come up with a new system, right? Is there going to come a time when the U.S., who has all the cards, or the U.S., who has all the military bases across the world, right? They have, how many bases does the U.S. have across the world? More than anyone else by a margin of ridiculousness, right? And then, they're going to be able to defend the dollar, which is currently the reserve system, to the best of their ability, right? Now, who's going to come up on top? Who has, the most leverage? Is that China? Or China has some leverage, and they have definitely they definitely have a say, or they want to have a say of how the new system is going to look like, And Russia, they're in good shape. They're sitting on a ton of energy. They're sitting on just so many commodities, and they have their financial house in order. And by the way, they who have their financial house in order, they see inflation, and the central bank is tightening rates because they're worried about the inflation. And what happens if the Fed starts like getting worried about the inflation that they said was going to be transitory, but now is real and now is good for the economy? When if ultimately comes to, oh wait, this wasn't good for the economy, which we said from the very beginning when we saw it coming when no one else did, is that, they're going to, what are they going to do? Are they going to raise rates? What happens to Bitcoin if they raise rates? If they're raising rates because inflation's out of control, that's not going to put that's just going to try to to slow down the runaway train. They're just trying to slam the brakes on. The brakes don't just stop on an instant. It's going to take there's a lot of momentum there, and that's not going to be the top of Bitcoin. The top of Bitcoin will most likely, come from where it is in its 4-year cycle out of one of the 3 phases. Is it in its bull market phase? Is it in its bear market phase? And if it's not in its, by the way, bear market, people get confused. It's not 3 years. Just because it takes Bitcoin approximately 3.5 years to go from its previous all-time high and then back to making new all-time highs, that's not a bear market. The bear market was from the all-time high to that low, to that cycle low. That last, in the past cycles, 12 months only. You're not buying when Bitcoin makes, 3.5 years later, that new all-time high. You're looking to start accumulating from the bottom of that move. all the way up until the bull market phase began. Now, during the bull market phase, trading, boom. But, as far as spot position for myself, it was just to hold the whole way through and sell at the top. If, and if in certain strategies I won't be selling Bitcoin, I'll explain those to you for sure. Nevertheless, I forgot where I was going with that. I lost it. It was a good one. I couldn't finish it out. What else? Bretton Woods, right? So listen, if the system breaks where they need to sit down and make a new type of Bretton Woods prediction, we're going to see a big revaluation across all markets. I can only see that being as an enormously good thing for Bitcoin. There's nothing that I can see that is bearish for Bitcoin. That's why I'm so bullish on Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin is the bull of all bulls. Is another altcoin competing, against Bitcoin? Will there be a new Bitcoin? No, there'll never be another Bitcoin. Nothing else competes with Bitcoin. Does that mean that you can't have successful projects across the space? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous to think that, right? And I don't care what those successful projects are or what they do. Yeah, Bitcoin will be able to do it and better. It doesn't mean the other ones won't be used, right? But at the end of the day, you want your transactions taking place on the largest decentralized network there is. Now, you have attacks for like proof of stake attack against Bitcoin. Is that going to be successful? Is that going to be something that will be like not only a death blow to Bitcoin? Absolutely not. It's not even a concern, right? And by the way, those that are investing the type of money they're investing in, and I'm talking $1 billion and more, they want that proof of work. Now you have a lot of macro bros out there, right? And like they missed it all. They're jumping in literally 2021 bull market, and they missed it all. And they're like, Ethereum is the future. We're putting all our money into Ethereum, and you should put your money into Ethereum. They feel like they're riding that train. I mean, listen, we knew Ethereum was going to outperform, or our expectation was that Ethereum was going to outperform, and we said it when there were many people in the community who, from just us sharing our belief of what we felt like what we viewed happening in Ethereum, that took and had extraordinary Ethereum positions, right? And Ethereum has outperformed, but at that particular time, I also made it known to everyone why, for me, it's Bitcoin, and the choice is Bitcoin, right? And I do talk about how Ethereum is highly speculative, right? Sure. And I also talk about how many network effects Ethereum has, and because of them, it's basically unstoppable. Even if another protocol is 10 times better than Ethereum, to take the market share away from Ethereum, you could have a better operating system and cheaper, maybe not cheaper, but better than Android. And it doesn't mean people are going to use it. It doesn't mean that, because everyone who buys a Samsung phone could get an Android if they want it. And that's if people are using Ethereum and the network effects continue, Ethereum is going to continue just to eat whatever portion of the world it eats. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it will be DeFi. I honestly, I get confused with how expensive these gas prices are. I think if you send $500 of Ethereum and you pay $130 in gas, I don't understand it. However it works, great. What will happen with Ethereum 2.0? Will it be successful, and how long will it be successful for? Will it last 5 years? We don't know. We don't have the answers to these questions yet. More importantly, will there be any type of regulatory issues with Ethereum 2.0? Right. As of right now, there were questions of whether or not Ethereum was an illegal security sale or not. And they kind of decided to let it go as it is. If they have this upgrade and change to proof of stake, and they're offering rewards and yields, I don't know what the regulators are going to say, but I think it's a risk. I don't think we don't have the risk of the regulators coming against Bitcoin, right? The regulation is continues to be for Bitcoin, right? Now there's a question about privacy, and people question about, listen, the regulation, it makes Bitcoin is a lot of things to a lot of people, right? And there are people who value privacy, right? Bitcoin's a public ledger, right? You understand your transactions are not private, but they would like to exercise their ability to transact to the best of their ability in private as allowed, right? And that seems like reasonable, like liberty request, right? It's Edward Snowden does such an eloquent job of describing why it's the right to privacy does not mean that here I could show you everything. It's not a question about that. It's a fundamental freedom, and people do not want to have every transaction tracked and traced, right? There are these analytic companies, chain analysis companies, that are on all the exchanges. They know what all your transactions are. They're able to track it. Everything is on this public ledger. Is it still a better choice than the existing system we have? Right? Do you have any privacy under the fiat system? Well, you have the privacy in that you're able to, for now, to transact in cash. But when they introduce the digital dollar, which they're going to introduce, there's no more cash transactions. So you're losing your privacy there 100%, right? In Bitcoin, I suppose if you're an expert, you could do a pretty good job at keeping your Bitcoin private, right? You can mine Bitcoin. That's KYC free Bitcoin, right? Maybe you're just paying for you're just paying for the electricity to get that extra money, paying that extra premium to get that transaction free Bitcoin. Maybe if you're good at OPSEC, operational security, you're able to keep your transactions more or less, on a public ledger, but private, and, of course, one mistake and everything you've ever done is no longer private. It has now become public. You would have to be an expert on these things. You'd have to be very, tech savvy. I have trouble, with the remote on the TV, so there we are. What do you, any other questions? That was the Bretton Woods. Boom, boom. I think we got everything, and a lot has happened since it's Friday though. I'm gonna play some more Honeymoon. We'll talk about that in a second. It's way too many. I got to stop it so I could just go over a few things. Well, a few great things over here. George, what happened if Bitcoin falls below 30K? Does Michael Saylor face any time? If Bitcoin falls below 20,000, I think was the math we were working out in the stocks Discord channel. Right? Go back and search. Look for that. Search in the search box 20,000. You could read a thread shared on Twitter, and then my response to it. But, and there's also this podcast. Hold on one second. Take a screenshot, right? There's I have a screenshot of it. So if you search inside Apple's podcast, biggest bull pose. So sorry. There we go. Does Bitcoin's biggest bull pose a hitting market risk? If you watch this episode with Preston, and they talk about Michael Saylor, his position on Bitcoin, what the max risk could be on that. That's what you want this weekend. I was gonna take the snippets of you and share it with you, but it's really not that important. And Michael's really not under any pressure. And Michael's not selling his Bitcoin, right? Well, what would happen? Anyway, that case is made regularly here, and talked about as thoroughly as possible. Well, I don't know what took place at the meeting with the CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong and Powell. We talked about it occurring. We've talked about it being face to face, but obviously there's no record, there's no public record of what was said there or what happened, or was it a coincidence that was Bitcoin's like high? It broke down from 40,000, or 50,000 in that area. This was on the 11th of May that they met. By May 14th, we are like, okay, we're done. We're getting neutral. No more. Something's not right here. Don't know what it is. Things are very muddied. Things are very unclear, And then did that have to do with Powell meeting Brian? I have no idea. I have no idea. Either which way, we need to be able to profit from the manipulation that does take place. There was the question about everyone thinks that we're mid-cycle, right? Oh no, it wasn't there. Oh, someone was saying it was a good question. They're like, everyone thinks we're in a bear market. Everyone here on Conquering the Markets thinks we're in a bull market. Yeah, I mean, yes, if that's what you think. If people think that we're in a bear market, obviously I think that they're very wrong that we're mid-cycle. I don't know who these people are or anyone saying that. It's not, and all I can say is, where have they been prior, right? The whole way I've been on the right side, for way too long, and longer than anyone else I know, right? Why that whole hyper wave fear was being perpetuated throughout the bear market, talking about Bitcoin going into $1,000. The meme Bitcoin, Tony Vase has Bitcoin 1,500. That's what the fear was amongst people and traders as I was looking at the 4-year cycle and calling the bottom that December 2018 after we capitulated, put in the Adam and Eve bottom, coming out of the Adam and Eve bottom. And then shortly thereafter, 30 days later, talking about the impulse wave up, calling Bitcoin 8,400 off the low 30, happening within 3 months, 90 days. We not only did that happen, we went as high as 14,000, and then again, just continuing to be on that right side. I don't know why anyone would consider, when you're looking at Bitcoin, trading above the prior all-time high as a bear market. Let me look at a bigger chart with you, a longer chart. Let me go over here with you. Now, if we were taking out the previous all-time high, that's something to me that I would say something's very wrong on Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has never done that before. It has never made a new all-time high, then taken out the golden ratio, the 1.61 fib. Big shout out to Misconfig, right? And then gone ahead and traded below that last previous cycle high. And if it did that, something is way off. I don't know what it is by any means. Yeah, but that's not my expectation that that's going to happen, right? And if that were to happen, I mean, what would you be doing? What would you be doing? I know that I would either just be holding my position, waiting, and or anything that, if you have to sell your chair and buy more Bitcoin. That I wouldn't be selling my Bitcoin. I wouldn't be exiting my Bitcoin. No, I mean, I wouldn't know what, like, I would be very confused, and I would be obviously doing my best to make sense of what was happening. But anyway, that's that. I mean, so, but are we in a bear or bull market? I mean, I don't know how you make the case for a bear market. The rational route, he has said, for him, it's, Bitcoin is after it's down 70% is in a bear market. And then generally, you're looking at 85% drawdown. And for him, a bull market starts after price makes the new all-time high. That's when he begins looking at the bull market. It's much different for us at CTM. We look at it differently. We look at the start of the bull market at the top of the blow off top, right? And we look at the low after the capitulation, a period of approximately 12 months, because that's what happens, the capitulation, approximately after the blow off top, cycle peak. Now, we didn't have a blow off top mid-cycle. In January, I was walking you through what a double peak this cycle of Bitcoin would look like. That's one thing we were looking for. We were looking for perhaps a double wave occurring during the bull market phase. Now, I didn't get the top of that, because we never, if we would have came into $100,000 fast, then I would have been looking, as I said, for a double wave. But that didn't happen. It was this slow exhaustion. It's different. And we're not getting a bounce out. We're getting a consolidation in the middle of it, right? It's different. So, by the way, so the way that I view bull markets, is from the bottom of the bear market all the way up to the peak. Was this the peak over here? Anything's possible. If Bitcoin peaked out we're not looking at diminishing returns. It's not diminishing. It's diminishing returns is like, $100,000. That's like the but $65,000. What happened to Bitcoin? How is it possible that public companies and countries are adopting Bitcoin and yet price trades at whatever? Listen, you could run the numbers yourself. You have to, I have. And not only have I tried to, with the greatest patience and love, help as many people possible just understand the bullish case for Bitcoin, as this is what I perceive to be the greatest opportunity of a lifetime, in our lifetime. The greatest opportunity you have to do something about your current financial situation. And financial situation is just one aspect of life, but it's an important aspect of life. And if you have your house in order, you could do a lot of good things in this world, right? Are you looking at, where do I have it over here? Understanding Bitcoin's, I'm looking for this being the greatest opportunity of our lifetime, all right? And I want to see what video is over here. And really focus. This is really important. What you're looking at here is the price of Bitcoin since 2012. Lay it up on top of each other. You're looking at Bitcoin's 4-year multiple. Okay, this is now for those who don't see the 4-year cycle, right? And again, it was defined earlier in this session. It's every 210,000 blocks. When I say 4-year cycle, it's not that every cycle lasts 4 years. There's differences in them, right? But they last approximately 4 years. It's just easier to say. And I want everyone to understand that. If you're still having trouble seeing the model, the 4-year cycle, and understanding it, well, try looking again. Try looking again at it. If you can't see, maybe that's a little harsh. I don't mean to be harsh with y'all. It's coming from a place of love. It truly is. It truly. I was looking for the one where I talk about the 12-year. This one over here, the 12-year long-term plan. I'm sorry when I'm
the potential.
Hold on.
Focus your time.
What else do we say over here? Let me finish my point. I want to finish this. I'm sorry for the tone. Symmetry that's occurring and taking place, right? Keep staring until it clicks for you. All right. Listen. A couple of things I want to focus down over here at the bottom, and you're looking at price the multiple 4 years later, right? Let's start with something everyone's familiar with right over here in March 18th, 2021. The price of Bitcoin was $58,500. Okay. Most of you have been in Bitcoin long enough to remember when that happened. Wait. I never got to look at the markets. It's so important here. We have to take a look at what's going on in the stock market. S&P 500 held that line of support, and resumed off of it very strongly. There it is, right? It's beautiful, right? So again, that bullish market structure continues to be very firmly in place right here, right? And price this looks very good. There's no question about that. We have a lot of room to the upside coming out of that. If Bitcoin didn't take out the swing high on its last move. When I say that, I'm talking about like Bitcoin over here, between here and here, didn't take out that swing high. S&P 500 taking that opportunity right now, bouncing and holding the support. The Nasdaq also, by the way, held the bottom of support. So anyone who's pushing their trade, you continue to push it, right? You were getting ready to exit here on the break, and you didn't break. You're still looking to push that trade. What about the DXY being rejected here by the resistance, the neckline? We looked at that earlier. Now coming down to this area of support, and we're about to close after this New York session. Do we close above or below that line? Very important here for the dollar. What else? I want to check out gold, right, into the resistance. All right. And silver, is just consolidating. Silver looks like Bitcoin a little bit, just putting in that correction. And I think this is a good idea now. We're now on silver. I could go ahead and I could add this line. And coming out of that line, the question remains, what's the better trade here, gold or silver? And I think that's dependent on what happens with the dollar. If the dollar breaks out to the upside, then gold might be outperforming, and with that strong dollar environment, gold may actually be outperforming against silver. If the dollar is rejected over here, but because yields are bouncing over, so much to talk about. I can't believe I missed all of this. As the yields broke down over here. Wait, what's going on? I'm on a log chart. As the yields broke down over here, we're coming in for that retest right now. We covered this extensively yesterday. I don't know if it was on the live stream or in the FX session. Rejection and resumption down is going to be very, very bearish. If we get back above this broken support, right, and that gets back above that now resistance, then we're back into this consolidation phase, waiting to break on the upside, or then we'll be looking what a breakdown to the downside would look like. Very bearish turn technically on 10-year this year. That's why we gave it its own subtitle in the video as that was occurring. Yeah, that's the markets. I think I was on the log chart when I was looking at gold, right? I do think that gold will outperform if the dollar breaks out to the upside. I think that if silver gets the technical breakout to the upside with the dollar being rejected and dollar weakness, I then think that we move back towards silver outperforming. Let's say if you look at the chart, let me come back to the daily over here, the 3-day even, just get a different vantage point, and we could see silver just putting in this massive sideways consolidation. What does gold look like? A little bit more bumpy. It looks either which way, they both look good long term. It's just a question of being patient during the consolidation, but taking the opportunity when the opportunity arises. For the gold to say I should look at silver because it occurred on silver, that was waiting for this couple of months for this consolidation to finish and then taking the breakout, right? And then when we had the trend breakdown, hoping for the breakout to the upside, but it not occurring, just exiting the trade. Now waiting again. Remember I said, well, there's no need to just take a trade too soon as we broke down out of here. Well, we don't know if we go down lower. It's not really a high probability trade to take an entry over here, right? If you took the trade anyway, and then you were very tight with your stop, you end up getting stopped out over here. And there's nothing else you could have done but take the stop. But it was too early to get into the trade. Over here, bouncing off the support, kind of putting a double local bottom on support. Was that a move that you'd want to take? For me, it also felt like an aggressive time. It felt like I feel like the best time is to wait for the break of the known trend line and then the known repair. And so I think we covered it all, right? Are we almost up for 2 hours now? How long? A minute and 8, but there's a lot to talk about in the markets. We didn't even look at FX, so let's look at FX because yesterday's session was there's so much going on. Yesterday we were seeing that big Japanese yen strength, but what's happening now? Look at this big move off of the support. We showed the confluence of support yesterday, not calling for a counter trend trade. Just noting you're coming down into support, but look at the magnitude of the bounce. But the bounce is all the way into resistance. We were talking about how it looks like the volatility is picking up and things because it's easier to trade when you have the volatility, right? And now we see if we get rejected from this resistance, this is setting up a conquering the markets short trade on the Australian dollar all day long. This is what I have it red flagged. No wonder I have it red flagged. I don't think I'll check out the session, but I don't think that I don't know if we were talking about longs down here. There was one. No, we weren't. We're talking about shorts. This was red flagged, waiting for the bounce into the resistance, which is here now for a resumption down. New Zealand dollar, we were looking at the possible long, right? That's why I had it blue, and I was talking to you and telling you about, a bounce over here. That could be a possible long entry. Out of everything, we said that the yen looked so strong against everything, including the dollar. But if the yen, as it was in these areas of supports, were to hold, I thought the New Zealand dollar would be the best trade out of that. New Zealand dollar, Japanese yen up 1%, which is, and is actually the lead. Also, the Australian dollar, Japanese yen up 1%, right? So it was the best option to take if you're taking that trade out of it. And that was why nothing broke down, right? By the way, the US dollar, Japanese yen coming back above or into, that's a tough one. That needs to be drawn up a little bit better and cleaner to understand. I want to take a second to do that right now. And yeah, so we're coming in for our retest right now, right? So it's not just on the Australian dollar, Japanese yen, it's also on the US dollar, Japanese yen. What these are is it too late on a Friday to enter these trades? Well, not only is, you don't even have you don't have an entry signal yet. You have to you just have criteria becoming met, right? Breakdown, retest, but you have to wait for the resumption. You have to wait for the entry signal. When's the earliest that could happen? The earliest that could happen would be Monday during the London session. Do you take that trade? Look, if the setup is so nice, these are some beautiful waves over here. Why I try to avoid trading Monday London and most of the time wait for the noise. The noise is like everything that happened, why the markets were closed over the weekend, because the world didn't stop while the markets were closed, right? A lot's taking place. The market's pricing everything else in. It's a little volatile. Usually it's a lot cleaner trading midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday into Friday during London before New York opens. But these look good. I'll be looking at them Sunday evening to see what is set up. New Zealand dollar, Swiss franc. This is trying to see. It looks like the support is holding. There doesn't seem to be anything tradable coming up on this whatsoever. The pound US dollar is green over here. That was just, like I was shying away from it, but we're just talking about coming off of support. If the dollar was rejected by the resistance, which trade would lead out. But what I said is I'd rather wait for this break. If I see the break of this current, impulse to the downside from this trend line, at that point, then I would be like, oh, okay, I could trade against the dollar now. Right? Because even though I'm neutral on the dollar, I'm neutral in the dollar between this resistance and this support. And the risk to reward is in favor of this side now, and I can manage my risk. What that means is if I'm taking longs off the pound US dollar, right, the resistance, is by far greater than my risk. So I'm able to manage my risk to reward. It doesn't mean that we don't trade down and or take out the support. If that happens, my losses are less than if I meet my expectations on the upside. So, all right. Several things. Again, a few things. We'll take a look at the euro. You'll take a look at the euro US dollar, right? Forex is very, very, very good right now. Waking up, starting to see it. Well, nice moves. Boom. Lots of things. Actually, Bobby said this much earlier. Could you go over dollar cost versus average losers for Bitcoin? Thank you for reminding me. You talked about yesterday how, the great, rule of trading, you don't average losers. Paul Tudor Jones, losers average losers, right? There is a big difference between dollar cost averaging into a position, right? Whether that dollar cost averaging is weekly, monthly, or yearly, and you're just simply buying time-based dollar cost averaging into your position, or actually if you're just taking a sum of money, call it $10,000, right? And instead of buying an instrument all at once at 10,000, decide to deploy, a $4,000, 40% of that now. And if price goes down X amount, another a portion of that, another 30% perhaps, maybe even 20%, and then 40% if it drops further. If you worked out the risk ahead of time, then you're not averaging into a loser, which is like more or less like, a position's going against you. So you should make the position size larger so that if it comes back a little bit, you actually could get out of the trade quicker. But then if it goes against you more, you start making that position bigger again, just hoping it comes back so you could get out of the position, right? All as you're doing is you're pushing your loser, and you keep trying to move your stop loss down to break even. But if you do that on the upside, think about that. If that was your strategy, just to push trades, right, and keep moving up your stop loss to break even, most of the time you're going to get away with it. You're going to get lucky. But those few that escape from you and that get away from you and never get stopped off for break even, that's where all your profits are going to come from. It's kind of like being a VC where they invest, expecting that 94% of the companies they invest in are going to go to zero. But they also have that expectation that of the rare ones they catch, they're not only going to meet up for all those other losses, they're going to really exceed them. So there was Bob, I'm glad you brought that up. With Dean, we don't trade on a Friday after New York gets to work. During London, though, entries could still be had on a Friday. I hold positions over a weekend. You have to understand that a position can gap against your stop loss over the weekend in FX. Since those markets are not trading, if your stop loss is set, 50 pips below market, and then the pair opens 150 pips below market, it's going to trigger a market order, and you're going to get stopped out, not at where you had your stop loss, but wherever the market's able to trade. Harry's mentioning that look, I just had one experience. It was months ago, and it was a $500 transaction, and I lost $130. It was my mistake. It was a waste of money, and I made the error because I didn't understand the gas fees. But that's what they were, and that made an impression on me where, well, I'm not going to transact in Ethereum, right? Now, are there people who what? I like to transact in Ripple. It costs nothing. I like to transact in Litecoin, or whatever it might be. I'm sure of it. Bitcoin for me, the transaction fees, it's super good. It's the best there is. It's not the cheapest, but it's the best. So that's why I don't know. That's just I don't know what the current gas fees are. That was my one experience, and it definitely left an impression on me where I would not look to transact in Ethereum because of that. In the past, years ago, of course, it was super quick, way quicker than Bitcoin. Remember in 2017, December 2017, the fees on Bitcoin were ridiculously high, right? This was an attack versus Bitcoin when the fork of Bitcoin Cash came out there, and they were trying to spam up all the transactions, spam up all the blocks. There's dirty stuff going on all the time, but Bitcoin is the honey badger, it's only going to make it stronger. And that's what happens over and over again. Lawrence are we talking about bearish for yields and bullish for price, deflation forecasts? We saw a huge breakdown on yields, and we flipped our position when it happened, saying what was happening and why it was such a big deal. This was the first time since we looked at what happened all the way when the Fed acted. Back in April, we're like, this is inflationary. And now all of a sudden we're saying, oh, well, price is saying for yields, this is going to be deflationary right now. And we've seen them come off. Was this is this secret yield control curve taking place? If you go back and you watch the channel in this area, right, what is it, into early April, late March, early April, we talk about the possibility that secret yield curve control may be in place, and we said, listen, I don't know if it is. I would have no way of knowing that, but the possibility, exists that right now that could be what's taking place. And that was it. Then we left it, right? That was off of like a Yahoo Finance article, and we just added it another piece to the puzzle and talked about it. Not trying to forecast. How could you know if secret yield curve control is taking place or not? Well, you can't because it's secret. Everything they do, meetings are face to face. Brian Armstrong, Jerome Powell, CEO of Coinbase, CEO, chairman of the Federal Reserve, the New York Federal Reserve. By the way, that's not a federal agency. That's not part of the U.S. government. It's like as Federal Express, the packaging company. So we're looking at, as we come in for the retest, if we're rejected in this area, it could be rejected below this trend line over here. It could be in this area. We could be rejected in this area. We could be rejected off this resistance, or we could be rejected at any point on that resistance. And until we break above here, we can't say that this bullish momentum has continued. Now, if price jumps back above this resistance here quicker in this area, well, then things have gone neutral a lot quicker. And it doesn't mean that we're going to break out. And it could mean that we break down from there. It's just how you manage your risk. And right now, that was a position flip for us. We wouldn't flip again, right? We could flip neutral, getting back above this trend line, right? But really be watching to see a break of this trend line before going bullish on yields again. So I don't know if what we're seeing, what is yield control curve actually taking place. It certainly appears to be and looks like it. Does that mean that we can still see are we going to see a correction in the stock market? What's going to happen to asset prices? Forget yields. What's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin? What's going to happen to the price of the indexes? What's going to happen to the price of gold and silver? How are they going to perform here with yields falling? Well, we don't have to worry about Bitcoin because we know over the last 10 years, as yields have done nothing but fall, that Bitcoin has been Bitcoin, right? So whether the yield's rising too fast, Bitcoin becomes for sure an inflation hedge. When yields rise rapidly, Bitcoin raised This was a great learning experience for us going forward. Are we going to get into a point now where they seem to be signaling that inflation is not transitory, that inflation is here to stay, and inflation is good, right? During that period when the market's like, no, inflation's not good, and yields start spiking up, how does Bitcoin react during that period? Well, the last time that happened and yields spiked up, Bitcoin flew. That's when Bitcoin was rocketing and why, right? So if we go back to a period like that, do we expect that Bitcoin is going to act the same? Yes, I do, right? Is that the base case? Not right now. We just broke down. Right now we've gone from bullish to bearish on yield. Does that make me bearish on Bitcoin? No, that's just one aspect of Bitcoin. That's not the investment thesis on Bitcoin, that if yields rise, I go long on Bitcoin. I know that when yields fall, Bitcoin outperforms doing Bitcoin things. However, in these rare occurrences where yields shoot up, you could see also the price of Bitcoin shooting up. Look over here, the peak of January, right? December 2018, yields rising. Now yields kept going up, but they weren't spiking. As they were spiking up, that's when Bitcoin was going parabolic. I would gather that the next time and I think yields are going to realize at a certain point in time that the inflation is here to stay, that they have to rise. At that point, you're going to see Bitcoin doing Bitcoin things. That's not happening right now. What about for the stock market? Well, technically here, the stock market is as bullish as you can get, and that I have to follow price. So even though yields, possibly, getting ready for a trend, I call it a trend changed. I'm looking for a drop in yield prices, and I just explained thoroughly what would need to change that to the upside. But the S&P 500, we just held the support, and we have so much room here to the top of this trend line, coming in around $45,000, 45,000 S&P points. And it could break that resistance. This has only been resistance going back since November 2020, a little further into October. But it could break towards the top of the range, people think that the market has come too far too fast right now, and it certainly looks like it. When you look at the Nasdaq and you look at like that is like, you know, a pretty strong and straight up move. But the thing is, the reason that's happening because so has the expansion of the liquidity of the monetary supply of the Fed's balance sheet and all central banks' balance sheets. And what you're seeing is a reflection of that. That's all it is. And the direction of the balance sheets, we're not seeing tightening anytime soon. You know, what we're seeing is that continuing to be abundant, right? They're not even lessening their paces yet. So, you know, what are our expectations? That this will continue to be asset inflationary? If, for sure. That's the base case. Are we looking for corrections? At all times. At all times, we're looking for corrections. We're not in any type of cycle when it comes to the stock market. The only cycle that we're in is ever since, you know, 2008. The cycle started when they started the $700,000 billion bailout over here when the system broke. And since then, it's been follow the liquidity, right? Could we have a dollar problem once again, having repo market break well, like several months in advance, leading up to a global lockdown and then a massive drop? Yeah, that could happen again. I mean, that. I hope that was a once in a lifetime event. And why I do believe the market will break again in the future. You know, I don't think the market will break again in the future until the Fed starts tightening. And I don't think the Fed could ever tighten. That's the whole thing. Now, is it possible they do? Yes. I believe that my awareness of the market is strong enough that if the Fed does tighten, to be able to realize what's going on and to maneuver with it. Nevertheless, my base case is that they're never going to wind up being able to tighten, right? They're only going to have to do more. What happens in between? You know, it could be a lot of things. You know, there's a lot of moving pieces. The housing market is one. Obviously, commodity prices was another. They seem to have taken the snap out of the commodity prices. We talked about, as China said, that their intention was to come against the hot commodity prices. You know, that's when we saw the correction. We made note of it as it was happening. Just listen, it's pretty. If China's saying that they want to come against these hot inflationary prices, as the U.S. are saying on, then do expect some type of result. They were able to do. What's China doing now? You know, they had to start easing this week, and that's what it looks like. The monetary, you know, supply continues in one direction, and it's upwards and it's everywhere. How long will it be before they have to sit down and make a new system? It, you know, as long as they can make it, you know, no one's in a rush. People are making moves. Russia de-dollarizing, China launching the digital yuan. You know, everyone across the board, the chess pieces are moving, but they seem to not be moving in unison anymore. You know, ever since the 2008 crisis, everyone worked in unison. When the Bank of Japan wanted to ease, everyone else around them helped them do that. Because one central bank acting alone, it only has a small term effect. It doesn't have a long term effect. When all these banks act together in unison, they're able to make, you know, the Plaza Accord when they needed to strengthen the dollar. Anytime they want to do these things, they can do them. But now they seem to be acting separately, you know, and that's signal. Well, how much longer does this create a problem where we come to an inflection point, an impact point? You know, those impact points tend to be far and few between, you know, and we're not seeing one take place in this moment. Is this a euphoric blow off top of the markets that's occurring right now? Maybe, you know, and if it is, we could go a lot higher. Usually in a euphoric blow off top, you're looking at 34% of the range happening in the shortest amount of time, you know, but we have the advantage of watching when the market structure breakdowns. Remember, going back yesterday, if we broke down below this area, at that point, you know, we said, well, that's a technical breakdown. That doesn't become bearish on the market that we're seeing some type of correction. A break of this triangle sure would be, and that would be targeting the bottom end of the support anyway, right? But that's a big area for a correction, right? And then breaking down below that, well, then we're really looking at a real correction. And then we talk about, you know, what the downside risk could be on that. You know, is it a gift to get an 8-9% correction on the S&P 500 during the course of the year. Will you get that lucky this year? Because we're not seeing 7-8% returns this year. So far, we're seeing 14% returns on the S&P 500, and we're only mid-year. What that looks like at the end of the year, nobody knows. Nobody knows. We could just follow what's going on. Is it worrying if we see another 20% decline in the dollar? And then all of a sudden, I know Michael Saylor doesn't like to consult models, but the model he's using is that last year the dollar, devalued by 40%, or 37%, he says. So if the dollar devalued by 37%, and that's the model he's following, obviously past behavior, not indicative of future results, is your expectation that the dollar was going to devalue by another 37%? Mine wasn't, right? Now, we did have 1/3 of the QE though, right? Instead of 4.1 trillion, it's 1.4 trillion, a little more, right? So is it possible that the dollar devalues by another 34%? Well, I guess it's possible. I never really thought about that until now, but yeah, that seems possible. How is that reflecting? Where are we seeing that? We're seeing that in things like housing. We're seeing that in the stock markets, and we're seeing that obviously abundantly in cryptocurrency, specifically in Bitcoin, right? Now, a lot of the speculation has died down. I mean, people were. I had a friend, a close friend, like such a close dear friend, who for years was making the bullish case to Bitcoin for, and then I get the text message that right before Elon Musk went on Saturday Night Live that they bought Dogecoin. And I was like to my wife, I'm like, I can't believe it. I've spent all this time making, the bullish, like really trying to help them understand what's going on. And they buy Dogecoin. And they bought Dogecoin at the top. I mean, that's rampant speculation. You're looking to make calculated investments, calculated returns. Listen, the S&P with falling yields could go much higher. We're seeing bullish price action, a bullish structure in the market. We're looking for the first possible signs that this change in market dynamics, and if that includes a dollar breaking out to the upside, and if that includes yields falling, that we're going to see if the stock markets also give a technical break and or break down. And if that does, then we're going to make sure that that is our understanding, right? Now, Bitcoin, the difference, I wasn't looking over here for a technical breakdown mid-cycle. I was looking for a shakeout, and I wasn't looking for a blow off. I was looking for a possible blow off top, not seeing one. What I didn't see was a rounding exhaustion mid double wave. That wasn't on my radar, And if it's not on, I tried to be aware of everything that could possibly happen, but this was not something that I was really looking for, right? And now, would I have taken profit and stopped trading a lot sooner? Well, yeah. I don't want to get into it now. It was managed extremely well, but without the awareness that this could be, looking at a 53% drop from where the all-time high was, potentially even more. So, anyway, I'm just trying to keep this Friday session going. I was seeing if we could get up to 600 likes. I guess with 674 people here, 591 likes, it was pretty good enough. We saw, we did it. Let me play some Honeymoon and see if there's anything else we're closing out on. If the SEC actually considered Ethereum 2.0, I think that would be very bad for Ethereum. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. It's a risk, right? Bitcoin doesn't have that risk. Bitcoin is not changing its nature in such a way that could present a risk. Ethereum is. Whether or not it will be one, if you're investing in Ethereum, understand that it should outperform. That's been my base case. That it's highly speculative, which is why you're getting that outperformance, and that outperformance occurs during the bull market phase of Bitcoin. In the bear market, Ethereum is expected to underperform. That's speculation under pressure that is priced in the other way. So expect Ethereum. Is there come a day and time in the future when Ethereum breaks away from Bitcoin's 4-year cycle? Yeah, or Bitcoin's 210,000 block cycle? Yes, there is. That hasn't happened yet. When it happens, we'll be aware of it. But until then, it continues to track Bitcoin outperforming during the bull market phases and underperforming during the bear market phases. So, what else? Honeymoon. Yeah. I always got this. Always. Right? I didn't mean to. I meant to lower the volume. Well, I always got dislikes. That's for sure. The big legal bodies. Britain's got big pockets. They're lawyering up. I would imagine you have the advantage. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So a couple of things, right? Tether is a target for central banks. I should have this before I lose it bookmarked. Tether, target for central banks. You won't hear much about USDC because central banks can control it and is the prime candidate for a central bank digital currency. JP Morgan, USDC. Yeah, for sure. There's no question about that. That is highly surveilled. They have full control over it. They have full access, full insight, full control. They could reverse any transaction. They want transactions that is Tether become a target. Listen, when things are a target, the central banksters, the politicians, they're not usually like making it known that this is their target, right? When they're saying that like we don't like Tether for these reasons, this and that, is there something they could do about it? I don't know. I don't have the answers to these questions. Either way, my belief is that that doesn't affect Bitcoin, you know, and either way, it's only going to make Bitcoin stronger. That's my belief. Is it possible for people holding Tether that it could become a problem? I know personally from past experiences when USDC was an option on a heavily traded instrument like Bitcoin or Ethereum, that would be my choice. And then like on altcoins, that might not be a possibility, and you might only have the possibility to transact in Tether. And at that point, you understand that you're taking that risk on. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. You understand for that period of time that you're holding tethers, there's a risk that something could happen with Tether because there's a lot of FUD surrounding by it, right? So you understand those risks, And if Tether wasn't available one day and the other option was, USDC, or it was Pax Gold, or it was something else, then you have the ability to take that risk with whatever that option is and know your risks and understand your risks. The other thing is what happens to Bitcoin if Soros attacked the dollar like the pound and the yuan. What would happen to Bitcoin if Soros attacked dollar if Soros attacked the dollar? I mean, I guess Soros is taking an attack at the dollar by investing in Bitcoin. But no, Michael Saylor is potentially attacking the dollar by taking debt, by raising money through debt and buying Bitcoin with it. That is, the type of like speculative attack that Stanley Druckenmiller, working for George Soros, architected that ultimately, caused the Bank of England to capitulate, right? That's what Michael Saylor is doing right now. Will he be successful or not? Well, we'll find out. We'll find out in the future. I imagine as the price of Bitcoin rises and MicroStrategy is able to take on more debt, they will do it at opportune times. I think that's pretty much, it seems to me what their business plan is at this point. And yeah, so taking not taking down the Fed is a bigger. Does the Fed have to think of that as a risk? If you're sitting at the meeting, with the other chairmen, and you're like, or what's that conversation going like? Is that conversation like, all right, so we told them that the inflation was transitory, and now we're gonna tell them that look, it's here, and then so we have to tell them that it's actually good now. All right, so that has your how are we going to do that? How are we going to communicate that? Oh, by the way, we need to raise interest rates now because the inflation's out of control. Oh, by the way, we broke it. We need to add another $10 trillion to our balance sheet. Or are they like, listen, do you think that it's possible that China launching the digital yuan here is going to take away future proportion of the dollar being circulated as a reserve currency of the world? Or we're going to start seeing things transaction in digital yuan between Africa and China instead of going through the dollar? Is that going to start happening with Europe and or oil from the Middle East? Are the Arabs going to start selling oil to China, which China is the biggest buyer of their oil in euros instead of dollars? And if they do, what happens to the U.S. dollar? Or do you think they're like, hey, do you think Michael Saylor borrowing debt to buy Bitcoin is actually a speculative tack versus our financial system? I don't know. We have no idea what they talk about. Tom, what's going on? How are you? Listen, is it a bad idea to be patient? Is it a good idea to be patient? To work for your plan, be persistent, give back. Tom touching on all the principles here, conquering the markets principles. Absolutely love it. I'm gonna try to make this even bigger. Be patient, work your plan, be persistent, give back. It's all about finding peace and stability. Cheers, everyone. Have a great weekend. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Have a beautiful weekend. Peter, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the blessing you bring upon this community. Thank you to Miguel, Michael, each and every one of you, Giles, right? Adam Back thinks Soros and company will use Bitcoin to attack the dollar. Ooh, that's interesting. Please, Giles, if you haven't already shared, where do I find that? Oh, is there a Twitter thread or did Adam say something? I would love to know Adam's thoughts on that occurring. I would also love to know Max Kaiser's thoughts on that occurring. I would love to see Max and Adam talk about the possibility of that occurring and then let Michael Saylor at the end, say something about it. You can't let Michael be a part of that discussion because the whole discussion will be like, Bitcoin it's got to be like, listen, let's see what Adam says, and then please let me know. Stanley Druckenmiller is the real OG. That is for sure. That is for sure. All right, everyone. Legends. Could we explain the central bank digital currency? Currently, the Fed is printing digitally. Besides control, what would be the biggest risk to Bitcoin? I mean, well, I don't foresee what could happen is if the Federal Reserve launches the digital dollar and they thought Bitcoin was a threat, and they wanted to try to attack Bitcoin to defeat it, well, they can't print dollars and buy Bitcoin because as soon as they did that, Bitcoin's price appreciation would be hyper Bitcoinization. That would be the death of the dollar in the financial system. So that's not an option for them. The only option they have is they're guys with guns, right? They could through the government make enforcement where you can't mine Bitcoin in the US or you can't have an exchange in the US. There are no on or off ramps in the US. Now there are companies like PayPal who offer Bitcoin, right? There are companies, smaller companies like Square, you know, there's big companies like Coin. These companies, you know, I think that they would lobby to fight this type of action taking place pretty strongly. But like these guys are pretty diabolical. If they were able to do that and Bitcoin was banned from the United States of America, understanding that India was not able to ban Bitcoin, that China, I mean, you know, it used to be China tried to ban Bitcoin. China couldn't ban Bitcoin. Now, has China been successful in moving mining out of Bitcoin? It appears so. You know, does that mean that people can't, you know, buy and acquire and hold Bitcoin within their financial system? Are there any on or off ramps from the digital yuan to Bitcoin? I don't know. I would love to know the answers to those things. I don't know them. But if the Fed were to make it impossible for anyone in the US to transact in Bitcoin, except for doing it illegally, as they do in countries like Venezuela, they still transact in Bitcoin, right? Peer to peer, and they have different solutions. And those solutions, I mean, we're an innovative bunch over here. You know, we are an innovative bunch over here, and people would have solutions. But Bitcoin would basically migrate to the rest of the world. There are other jurisdictions out there, such as El Salvador, who will openly welcome Bitcoin as far as to make it legal tender for their country. There will be all of Africa will be embracing Bitcoin, right? They'll be because it gives them a fair and bright future. So as you start seeing other countries embracing Bitcoin, even if the Fed doesn't allow Bitcoin, there'll still be a means and a ways. And even if it came under any type of pressure near term, it would only be near term pressure. These are my expectations, you know, and they're important things to talk about and discuss. Now, Joseph, I'm just Jordan, and what a great honor to be sharing this journey with all of you, to be working hard, standing shoulder to shoulder with people who really want to change their future, and not only change their future, but have an impact on those around them, you know, and we see that happen like abundantly here in Conquering the Markets. The silent majority are so true and so strong. And you all who you are, I know who you are, and that's why it's the best. Is there anything else? That's it, everyone. You know, Peter, Jordan, Richard, everyone, lots of love. Have a beautiful weekend. Listen, if anything happens on Bitcoin over the weekend, we'll take a look at it. But we all know here, right? Bitcoin under pressure, breakdown, retest. We're watching to see whether or not this retest is successful, resume off, and then not only resume off, take out that swing low. Or if we break above this trend line, at that point, this looked like a fakie, and that could lead to a big move. I'm not trying to give you any type of hopium that that's what's going to occur, but if it does occur and you break above this line, we could be shooting up, you know, just as quick, and everyone will turn super bullish on Bitcoin really quick as we break, you know, towards the most important trend line in crypto. And then once it's broken, everyone is going to be uber, and I'm just going to be like, yeah, I told you I was buying the dip, and I bought the dip at 39,000 and 33,500. I bought the dip, you know. So there it is. Oh. Hey, Michael, could you post that in the macro channel on the Discord? Because I would love to see that video. I like Mark Moss's some of his videos. He did a video I saw called "The Great Food Reset," and I got halfway through it. It's a really good video though. He really explains things very well, and if you'd look, I would love to watch that video. Um, yeah, the replay crew is already active. Love to see that. This is it's a good one to have over the weekend. Anyone watching this replay, not Friday morning, not Friday afternoon, but Saturday, even into Sunday. I hope you're having a beautiful day. And if you're not, just know that, things are gonna get better. Things are gonna get brighter. That's for sure. Listen, everyone, have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you later.